voice into a more welcoming tone, Wren called out, "Come in, Riala of the Horses. I've been expecting you." The door opened with a sigh and squeaked a protest when the horse trainer shut it behind her. She was taller than he was, but so slender that she appeared fragile. Her red hair was pulled tightly back in a short braid that barely reached her shoulders. He got a quick glimpse of emerald green eyes before she dropped her gaze to the floor. She waited silently for him to speak, her arms held loosely at her side, and her face expressionless. He noted absently that she would have been beautiful if it weren't for the scar that covered most of one cheek. He greeted her in kind tones. "Trainer?" The green eyes briefly met his. "Spymaster?" There was a slightly mocking note that someone who was less observant would not have caught. Wren was so fascinated by the inconsistency between the demure mien and that subtle disrespect that he let the silence stretch uncomfortably long. When he didn't reply, she shrugged and turned her back to him to examine a nearby bookcase. The illusion of fragility was shattered with her movement. She moved with the grace of a trained athlete, and sinewy muscle corded her arm as she reached to pull a book out of its shelf. The spymaster watched her with a tingle of pleasure. This just might work. Experimentally, he held his silence. She turned a page and seemed to become engrossed in the book. Finally, Wren laughed softly, pushed his chair away from his desk, and said with a smile, "Aren't you the least bit curious about why I called you here today?" She replaced the book and turned back to him. "Yes." This time, her voice was as meek as it had been at first. "I spoke with Leith. I believe he is a friend of yours who informed me that you speak native-quality Duranian." He turned the statement into a question with an inquiring look. She shrugged indifferently, but her left hand came up to finger the scar that marred her face, and her gaze shifted back to the floor. Duranian slaves were all elaborately tattooed on the left side of their faces for identification. In Darn, slaves could not be freed. The tattoo marked them for life. Wren decided to change tactics. "Do you know who Lord Carston is?" he asked bluntly. "You mean other than Leith's brother?" she asked, but continued in indifferent tones without waiting for a reply. "He is one of the Duranian lords pushing to ally the kingdoms of Reth and Darn. I understand that the proposed alliance involves the marriage of King Mir of Reth to the King of Darn's older sister." Wren nodded his head in agreement. "Lord Carston is the most influential member of the Regency Council. With his support, the new alliance is a virtual certainty." The light mockery eased back into Riala's voice as she spoke for the first time without being prompted. "Cyanim wants to prevent the alliance? Maybe an accident for Lord Carston?" "Of course not," replied Wren in a shocked tone, widening his eyes improbably to show his innocent dismay at her suggestion. "My dear young woman, Cyanim never interferes with the politics of any government. We are mercenaries and merely hire ourselves out to the highest bidder." He knew when the corner of her mouth turned up in a reluctant smile that she caught the satire with which he spouted their official dogma. "So," she said, "tell me, why is it that Cyanim doesn't intend to hinder the alliance? The feud between Darn and Reth has diverted a steady stream of gold into our coffers over the past century or so." Wren looked at her with the same pleasure with which a schoolmaster might regard a pupil asking a thoughtful question. He rubbed his hands together with satisfaction and began to talk. "The Great Swamp has long been a barrier between the East and our West." He gestured to her impatiently. "Sit down, girl. This will take a while. Now then, the only trading currently done with the East is through the Instron sailing fleets that dare thread the shoals and reefs in the Southern Sea.